Good afternoon, Veritas scientists. It is Friday, April 17th, 2020. We have April vacation coming up, so enjoy next week, Monday through Wednesday. You're completely off, so have a nice vacation. All right, so here's the question I asked you yesterday after we learned about the carbon cycle. This is the question, actually. It says, imagine that you're a carbon atom that's stored in a piece of coal. When the coal gets burned as fuel, where are three places that you might end up on Earth? Explain. So there are many correct answers to this problem. Let's go back to yesterday's model or yesterday's diagram that I drew to help explain the carbon cycle. So if you were a piece of coal, like the problem said, like the question said, and you were burned as fuel, where are three places that you could go in the atmosphere? Well, you could become carbon dioxide. You could be in the air, right? You could be anywhere in the atmosphere, in the clouds. You could be in the air that we breathe, anywhere up in the atmosphere. You could end up in a tree because the trees use carbon dioxide through the process of respiration so that they can make their own food in photosynthesis, right? So they actually breathe in carbon dioxide and they breathe out oxygen, which goes to humans. So you could be in a tree. If you were that carbon that ended up in the air as carbon dioxide, you could end up in a tree or a plant or a flower. And then you could end up in the ground once those die and the carbon that was in these trees end up underneath the ground. So you could end up under the ground forming fossil fuels. You could have been a dead plant or a dead animal that ended up under the ground. You could then be soaked up into a new living tree or a plant or a flower, right? You could end up in as a fossil fuel being burned. You could end up as oil in a car or an automobile or a truck or tractor or train or bus or anything that uses fossil fuels in order to have its fuel in order to move. Okay, you could end up in an animal. You could end up as a person because we breathe in oxygen and we breathe out carbon dioxide. So there's going to be some carbon dioxide in all of the animals in the world. So any of those answers, and remember that I reminded you yesterday that anything underwater could be possible too, right? The same process of the carbon cycle is happening underwater, where carbon is going through this cycle. It's going from one living thing to another living thing, and it's going through this cycle continuously. Okay, and every living thing on Earth requires carbon in order to survive. Okay, so good job. Look at your answer. Please send it to me, and I would be happy to check and see how you did. Okay, today's lesson, it is Friday, April 17th, 2020. Our science lesson is changing ecosystems, and we're going to try to connect that a little bit to what we've learned about coal and the carbon cycle. All right, so let's start with number one, the vocabulary. It says ecosystem. It's a community of living things in their environment, which all interact with each other in different ways. So an ecosystem is every living thing in their environment, and they all interact in many different ways. So it's anything that lives in a certain area. Okay? In other words, it's a giant food web that includes all of the living things in an area and the non-living parts of the environment as well. Right? If there's a place with giant rock cliffs, then birds are going to take cover there. They're going to use that as a home or as a shelter. So that is also going to be kind of part of the ecosystem. But generally, it's things that are alive. All right? So let's go down to the bottom. Here's two facts here. It says ecosystems usually change very slowly over long periods of time due to processes such as weathering, erosion, and animal adaptations. Now, we've talked about weathering a lot. We've talked about erosion a lot and how those very, very slowly will change. Things like rivers we've talked about, they change mountains, they change our land, right? In many different ways. But we haven't talked about animal adaptations, and those are very, very slow changes. Okay, all of these are very slow changes. And we're going to learn more about animal adaptations. We'll go there next, all right? But for a moment, for today, I want to talk about how sometimes ecosystems change very quickly. So usually they change very slowly. Sometimes, so not very often, they change very quickly. Such as due to natural disasters like earthquakes or tornadoes or something like that would happen. It would change an ecosystem very quickly. Human impact, so if people came and built a condo community, or they built some new buildings or a new library and they took out a park in order to do that, then that would very, very quickly, God bless you, change an ecosystem. Forest fires. I want you to think about forest fires because those were in our diagram about the carbon cycle yesterday. Okay, so think about where we went here. When there's a fire, there's going to be lots of carbon. All the black that we see, the ash and the soot after a fire, that is carbon. So I kind of want you to think about that forest fires are going to very, very quickly change an ecosystem. Same thing with mudslides, avalanches, rock slides, etc. Okay, so usually changes to an ecosystem are extremely slow. But sometimes they actually happen very quickly, some of the time. Okay, here's a question I want you to think of today. It says, using your knowledge of ecosystems and the carbon cycle, identify one negative and one positive impact that a quick change to an ecosystem would have on the plants and animals that live there. Explain your two impacts with one piece of evidence each. Okay, so this is a little bit of a hint. Use your knowledge of ecosystems and the carbon cycle. I want you to identify one negative, that should be easy, and one positive impact, that is going to be a little harder, that a quick change to an ecosystem would have on the plants and animals that live there. So based on what we just learned about ecosystems, all of those plants and animals are interconnected and they all rely on each other in different ways in order to survive, right? So that they can also survive in the place or the environment where they live, okay? So using that, we can probably find some good reasons why those are some negative impacts that's going to have if an ecosystem changes real quickly. Okay, so I want you to identify one negative impact, and this is the harder part. I want you to identify one positive impact that a quick change to an ecosystem would have on the plants and animals that live there. So if there was a quick change, what might be a good thing that would come out of that? Don't just give the first answer that comes to your head. I want you to really think about this carefully, and I'm excited to see what you guys come up with. All right? Make sure you explain those impacts. Give one piece of evidence for each. So make sure you give a good reason why that would be a negative impact, and give a good reason why that would be a positive impact that a quick change to an ecosystem would have on the plants and animals that live there. And that's it. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your April vacation, and that's it. Smile. Bye.